So I have a question about triplanar mapping with Corona materials and tyflow. Right now I have a high poly object, all quads, that is being skinned and then birthed using a tyflow. And so if I press play, we'll see all of these objects are being birthed into this pile here. And these are all particle collisions. Excuse me. And so I thought that if I took this object that's being birthed um, and I applied a unique material to it, that material would then propagate to all the birth particles. And so right now I have a triplanar material applied to it, which we can see here. You can see at the seams where it's blending. And if I go into the tyflow, we'll press play once again, birth some of these particles, and then we render it. Right now it has a default material assigned to it. So according to the documentation, the material instance is only working for V-Ray objects at the moment. And so even if I go into my tyflow and I apply an instance material, it won't work if I'm using Corona Render because it only works with V-Ray. So the instruction was for general material application to use a multi-sub object. And so an instance based upon the material ID. And so I applied a material ID, and if I go into the Slate Material Editor and I apply a multi-sub object, sorry, I'm selecting the wrong thing. I assign the multi-sub object, we can see it's behaving as expected. And in fact, it also works with Corona Multimap. This is all fine. The problem is that when I apply the triplanar material, you can see the triplanar material is acting as we should expect. The triplanar box projection orientation is global. It is with respect to the, local, but with respect to the entire tyflow object, which in this case consists of multiple particles. What that means is that each one of these particles, instead of having a local orientation to the triplanar mapping, it's getting this single global orientation based upon the XYZ coordinate of the entire tyflow object. This is a problem because what I need is for, in this case, is for each one of these objects to have a local triplanar mapping. And so if we go back to our object that's being birthed here, we'll apply triplanar mapping. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Apply the triplanar mapping. It won't show up in the viewport. That's just a limitation of the implementation with Corona and probably other renders for that matter. But we can see it in the renderer. And so if I rotate this object, you can see what I mean by local triplanar mapping orientation. It is respecting the current up axis of the object's local pivot, its local axis. And so, for example, if I want to apply a texture to this particle that will then be birthed over and over again into that pile, and I need that texture to have a consistent UV map that respects the local orientation of the object, it's not going to be appropriate for me to use triplanar. But in this case, I need to use triplanar because it helps resolve the seam boundaries without distorting the UV map. Obviously, what I could do is I could just apply a UVW map onto this particle and do a sphere map or a box map. But again, that's going to produce some distortion. And if I want all these little particles to be concrete or some sort of fabric or something like that, the triplanar mapping will go a long way to blending some of those artifacts and helping make it look more natural, especially when the mesh is distorted during the physics animation. So I just want to confirm that it's not possible right now, and that it is only possible to do something like that with V-Ray. And if you have any questions, please let me know. I'm happy to try to clarify.